Hey guys, Kakarot197 again with another question of the week. And today we'll be tackling two topics. Number one, how many Gundams were actually deployed during the 1 Year War? And then the second part of this video will basically be the commenters edition of last week's video, because there were a lot of responses to the civilian-owned mobile suits, so I decided I will just highlight some of the comments that I got on that video. And if you still crave some more mecha goodness after this video, Ryan Tank's newest book, To Be an Ace, is up for pre-order and releases on the 7th of May for only $3.99 or for free if you're a Kindle Unlimited user. If you read Strength of 1000, the first one in the series, you know exactly what to expect. Unique mechs designed and illustrated by professional artists on the outside, and on the inside of the book, a great story written by a passionate author out of love for the mech genre, and a mixture of the real robot and super robot genre. And this time there is a heavier focus on the super robot genre, as our heroes have to deal with a plot orchestrated by an ace pilot and his demonic companion. And if you haven't checked out the first one yet, until the 8th of May you can get it for 99 cents as an ebook. And if you sign up to the newsletter with the link in the back, you will get his fourth one for free. All links, including a free link to download the Kindle app on phone and on PC, are in the description down below. So moving on to the first question, asked by Sudahi51. Question: just how many Gundams were canonically deployed during the 1 Year War? I know there's the RX-78 1 to 7, but what about the other variants that we see? So, starting off with the RX-78 series, we know that canonically there were 8 RX-78 units produced. And I'll try to keep it simple for the sake of this video. So we know that 3 of them were shipped to Site 3 for testing purposes, and this then eventually turned into the anime events that we all know about. And even though these units are referred to as Unit 1, 2, and 3, we don't know if that also necessarily means that that made them the RX-78 1, the RX-78 2, and the RX-78 3. Because the thing is, with the Federation naming scheme, like a different suffix at the end simply means a different mobile suit. For example, with the gun cannon, you have the RX-77-2 and the RX-77-3 and the RX-77-4, all of which are distinct models that got their own production run. So it is very possible that we got a first batch of RX-78 units, which were all RX-78-1s, which were then further developed into the units we now know them as. For example, this picture here from Gundam Historica shows us at least 4 RX-78 1s. You can very easily tell by the arms and by the ankle armor, and possibly even 6 because of the way the picture is shot. So putting that aside for now, we know that after they got shipped to Site 3 with the Zeon attack, Unit 1 became Fubar, Unit 2 is the one Amuro piloted, and Unit 3 is the one that maybe was the RX-78-3, but definitely later became the RX-78-3 after it was loaded onto the wide base and then dragged along with the wide base serving as spare parts for Amuro, and then got fixed up at Jaburo and turned into the RX-78-3, which was then the testbed for the magnetic coating. Then for the 5 units that always remained at Jaburo, we have the Unit 4 and 5. Well, first there is another thing that we have to talk about. Canon stuff and non-canon stuff. A lot of people will know Unit 4, 5, 6, and 7 through their video game counterparts. Now, the thing with all of these units is the basic storyline is the same in the MSV series, which is 100% canonical, and in the video games, which is sadly 0% canonical, although for most people, me included, will typically have that as canon in their own headcanon. So, with that aside, Unit 4 and 5 were assigned to the Thoroughbred and participated in Operation Star 1. That is the 100% canonical story. Everything else referred to the video game. Then Unit 6, which is the one that was seen in Zeonic Front, the Muddraw Gundam, that thing doesn't really have a lot written in MSV, so the full canonical backstory is quite open on that one. And then Unit 7, again, very similar with the video game and the official MSV setting. It wasn't completely finished during the 1-year war. Only the mainframe was finished, and it was then finished after the war. But if you paid attention, in the beginning I said that there were 8 RX-78 units, and so far we only talked about 7 of them. And well, the thing is, we just don't know anything about the 8th unit. We know it existed in some form, but that is literally all that we know about it. It's mentioned in manuals, it's mentioned in MSV, but that's all we know. It existed. So moving on to the other units that we know about, we of course have the Gundam Alex from Gundam 0080, and then we have 28 ground Gundams, which also includes all variants of the ground Gundam. That is the EZ-8, the 3 Blue Destiny units, the one that was used by the Slave Wraith unit. But again, Slave Wraith unit is a video game, not necessarily canonical. The Blue Destinies, on the other hand, were confirmed as canonical in that one round table meeting they had where they decided all of this. So Gundam canon can be difficult. Talking about canonicity being difficult, we now move on to the Full Armored Gundam and the Heavy Gundam. Both share one thing in common, and that is that in the original MSV setting, they didn't exist. They were just data in a computer simulator. They did tests on them and decided, with the Full Armored Gundam, they did tests on it, decided that it wasn't fit for combat, and the full armor add-on parts would be an unacceptable loss of speed and mobility, so it was never built. Later, however, we get other official sources that tell us that it did exist. Not only did it exist, it fought against Johnny Raiden. Choose whichever one you want. Then with the Heavy Gundam, again, depending on where you look, you will have either 3 units that were made after the 1-year war, or you have 1 unit piloted by Colonel Den Berserk in an attack on the Peasant asteroid base. So pick whichever one you want, or maybe you could even say that the 8th Gundam was developed into either the Full Armor Gundam or the Heavy Gundam, and that's how you want to have that in your headcanon. Again, officially, the 8th Gundam, we know nothing about it. Then next up, we have the Gundam Marine type, but we don't know exactly how many units were produced, or if they even saw any action at all, because I don't remember where I read it, but I remember seeing somewhere that apparently they never even saw combat during the 1-year war, that it was all the Marine, the Aqua Gyms that saw combat, which, by the way, the Gundam Marine type is just a souped up Marine Aqua Gym, sorry. And then the final Gundam units that did or did not see action during the 1-year war were the 3 Gundam Pixie units. Now, the problem with the Gundam Pixie is, despite them being quite popular from what I feel when I mention them in my videos, they are unfortunately non-canonical. Again, going to that round table discussion where they decided what was canon and what wasn't canon, they singled out the Gundam Pixie and said that thing is not canon. So again, make of that what you want in your own headcanon. And to cover all of my bases here, again, we are talking only mainline UC. We're not talking Thunderbolt. We're not talking the Origin. Those are in their own variant of the UC. It's like Macross. You have the normal Macross series and you have Do You Remember Love Macross. We're not talking about which one is better here. We're just talking about canon to their respective universes. So, moving on to the second portion of this video, the civilian mobile suits, and boy did I go down a rabbit's hole with that one. I got a bunch of comments regarding it. Some mobile suits I missed, some that I honestly couldn't believe that I missed when I read the comment. And so first we're going to tackle 2 interesting comments. Where do I have them on my paper here? There we go. 2 very interesting comments by The Terror of Death and Morris Kurth. So with The Terror of Death, he said that shipping companies in the Universal Century might want to use civilian mobile suits to protect their cargo because they definitely have a pirate problem in Universal Century, and that is something that comes up in a lot of manga from A Cold Ciel all the way into the very prominent Crossbone Vanguard. And then with Morris Kurth, basically the same thing, an age of sail style legislation with arm chips to guard the cargo, which is a very good idea, drawing the analogy with like Star Wars and having the cannons on certain cargo ships like the Millennium Falcon. I think those two comments together might just be how the legislation in Universal Century works. And when you think about it, that's kind of what Judo did at the end of Double Zeta Gundam. He just kept his Double Zeta Gundam as an escort for his ship. So now moving on to the civilian mobile suits that I missed. First up, we have Shigeya Roa with the Gelgoog that was owned or at least used by Rekuwa Lond. And this is like one of those comments, I read him and I was like, I totally forgot about that, because you see the AUG basically finding an old Gelgoog in like an abandoned ship. They bring the Gelgoog aboard, fix it up, and then Rekuwa uses it on a mission to kind of like infiltrate into a Titan ship, and she just has a casual conversation with like one of the Titans guys about how it's a really nice mobile suit and about how they fixed it up. So this definitely shows how normal it is in the Universal Century as a civilian to just straight up own an old mobile suit that is apparently completely functional. Then moving on to Sharpest Woods' comment about Poptimus Shirako, and yeah, that's a very good point. He did like to make his own mobile suits, and he definitely made some of those before he became a member of the Titans. Then we go a bit further into the Universal Century with the Desa type, which was commented by The Was Ted Youth. So the Desa type is a pretty interesting thing because it was another one of those mobile worker type situations where they wanted to make a military mobile suit, but they disguised it as a like working machine, and they actually marketed, advertised it, and sold it as a working machine. Like there was also the one time where the mobile worker from the Origin was used as an actual construction machine, but by and large, that thing was meant for the military. But the Desa type, even though it was meant for the military, it did see civilian use. And talking about civilian-owned machines, we have the D Gundam from Gundam Double Fake, which was commented by Seriously Not a Spy. Also, for anyone wondering, I do have that manga, and I am planning to make a video about that somewhere in the future, but it's one of those things where I can't really give a guarantee when I'll make a video about that. But I am definitely aware of Double Fake's existence. Moving right along, Christopher C. commented that the Fleming Company also used old gyms like as construction machines. That totally goes as a civilian-owned machine, which would mean that you could use those old gyms from Thunderbolt, that you could get your hands on them as a civilian. Interesting. I could actually own my own gym if I lived in Thunderbolt UC. And then going back to normal timeline, well, the normal UC timeline, the Tiger Bound dude, which I believe is the same one commented by Multi Rakusho, the fat dude who got old Xeon suits and brought them up to spec. Now, if memory serves me right, that's the old guy that had like those old Marine Xeon units hanging around. Like, I remember a Zagog. I vividly remember that thing. And some of the weird ones too, I believe. I'll have to look that up. Then we now get on to the alternate universes. We have King of Salt Games, the Butler Gundam, and a few people commented the Butler Gundam, and definitely I totally forgot about that one. And yes, that steering wheel is hilarious, and I think we can definitely consider the Butler Gundam as a civilian-owned mobile suit. Like, the mobile fighters themselves probably don't really count as civilian mobile suits because they're still like state-owned thingies. Yeah. Another unit that was mentioned quite a few times was the Construction Leo, and the first one that commented that, I believe, was Ska3041. Moving on, we have Gamer Nick 1, and he commented about the Works Jin. Now, technically speaking, it's not part of the Gundam Seed MSV line, but it's part of the Gundam Seed Astray line. But it most definitely was called the Works Jin, and It was totally a civilian mobile suit. It was, again, something sold by the Junk Guild and something you could totally get your hands on as a civilian in the Cosmic Era. The Cosmic Era definitely seems to be the best timeline to be in if you want civilian-owned mobile suits. Then the next one was by Caleb Moon, the Stargazer Gundam, which, yes, that was definitely the most obvious one that I forgot. The whole story of Stargazer basically revolved around, well, most of Stargazer revolved around like the Federation trying to get their hands on the Stargazer Gundam, or like foiling it if they couldn't. And yet I totally forgot about that. It's one of those things where sometimes you just forget about the most obvious ones. Like earlier, when I was making my list for mobile suits from, well, Gundams from the 1 Year War, I almost forgot about the Alex Gundam. That was like the last one that came to mind. And I was like, how could I forget about the Alex Gundam? Anyways, it's not really one of those things that a civilian would own necessarily, but it's definitely a civilian-owned mobile suit, even a civilian-owned Gundam. Then next up we have the Sakibure, which was commented by Barry Bend and quite a few other people as well, and again, totally fits the bill. It's a mobile, like a mobile worker officially, but for our sake, it is definitely a civilian-owned mobile suit. And then one that's, again, kind of in the same vein as the Stargazer, we have the H1, commented by RayShadow278. It most definitely was a civilian-owned mobile suit. It was, yeah, it was kind of the family heirloom of the Asano family. I totally forgot his name for a second. Yeah, again, totally civilian owned, not something the average civilian can own, but definitely civilian owned. And staying in the Gundam Age universe, we again have one of those obvious things that I forgot about, commented by Mr. Alejandrosi. I'll go with that. The Madorna Workshop, probably one of the biggest signs that customized and civilian-owned mobile suits were a thing in Gundam Age. Staying in Gundam Age, we also had racing and sports mobile suits in that series, as commented by Jonah Arts and a few other people. And the weird thing here is that I apparently did a much better job at forgetting about Gundam Age than I thought I did. Anyways, moving right along to G Reco, we have a comment from J Truong, who commented about the Recton, which is basically a giant Asimo, and again, most definitely a civilian-owned mobile suit. Then we have Imomushi's comment. He also commented about the Sakibure, but he also commented about the Walking Dumpling, the Ballona, and the Hluk Grace. So the what I wouldn't really classify as a civilian mobile suit. They did some work here and there, but we don't really see them being owned by civilians from what I remember from Turn A, because that's another series that's been a long time since I watched that, and I did probably forget quite a bit about that. But the Bellona definitely is a civilian-owned mobile suit. That thing was aimed at civilians. And then the final unit on this list, the Hluk Grace, I would say that that one totally fits the bill. They were designed to be sold to civilians, used by civilians. They were used for colony repairs. And yeah, they were also used by militaries from smaller countries, but I think that the Hluk Grace is totally a civilian, like something that we would totally consider a civilian-owned mobile suit. Staying in the Iron-Blooded Orphans universe, we also have the Gilda, which was commented by JTMC93, totally a civilian mobile suit or used by civilians. And then finally, Valsion Custom commented the Spinner Rhodey, another one of those machines that a couple of people commented, because in the Iron-Blooded Orphans universe, I think that is definitely one of the most general use things you can get. It was used to fight with, it was used in construction and stuff, it was used by civilians, it was used by basically everyone in the Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans universe. Or I guess I should say it could be used by anyone in the Iron-Blooded Orphans universe who had the money to buy one. Now, one final thing that I just quickly want to comment on with the Iron-Blooded Orphans universe and this question is that I did get some comments saying that, well, basically everyone in the Iron-Blooded Orphans universe is a civilian, so basically every mobile suit in Iron-Blooded Orphans is a civilian mobile suit. And in the spirit of the original question, I wanted to look at it from more the legal side, because the thing in Iron-Blooded Orphans is, one, not really everyone is a civilian. When you look at organizations like Tekadon, they are a private security firm, and yeah, you have private security firms, you have basically private military companies, which I would not really describe as the average civilian. That's kind of going against the idea of the question. And then the second thing that we see a lot in Iron-Blooded Orphans is groups that are what we would consider pirates. That is, again, not really going with the spirit of the question. Because if we're gonna go with that logic, you could even say that the Gundam Unit 2 from 0083 was a civilian mobile suit because, well, Gato is technically a civilian because, well, that Zeon that he's serving for doesn't really exist anymore, and he captured it as a civilian. Ergo, the GPO-2 with his nuclear missile is a civilian mobile suit. It's a bit of an extreme example, but I think you can see where I'm coming from here. Anyways, that's all for this question of the week. If you can still think of more civilian mobile suits that would fit the criteria and weren't on this list, the previous list, or were mentioned in my Astray development history video, leave them down below and I will get to them as well. Or if you think that there are some Gundams missing from my Gundams that fought in the 1 Year War list, also leave those down below. So then, all that's left to do now is to give a big thank you to Ryan Tang for sponsoring this video, and as always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope all of you watching have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.